All right, we are here with Carl Jones, who is an acclaimed writer, producer, director, and voice actor in the entertainment and animation industries. He is best known for his work on award-winning projects such as the Boondocks and Black Dynamite, and he also recently founded the multimedia production company Martian Blueberry, which is dedicated to diversity and inclusion in the entertainment marketplace, as well as crafting ideas that push traditional boundaries and challenges the entertainment status quo. The studio's portfolio spans a wide array of media forms, from partnerships with major networks and NFT companies to visual effects, 2D, and 3D animation services. The company has also produced work for notable names and organizations like Megan Thee Stallion and Major League Baseball, and it continues to create its own path as an entertainment powerhouse. Carl, welcome to Two Black Nerds. We're super excited to have you on today. How you doing today, man?
I'm good, man. I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you again for joining us. This should be a really, really exciting conversation, and I know we definitely have a lot that we want to get to. So we'll dive right in. But before we do, we want to start off with a little bit of an icebreaker question. Kind of switch it up, do something a little bit different. So the first question I'm actually ask you before we dive into Martian Blueberry and some of your other legacy projects: what animated movie would you say would have benefited the most from having an all black cast? This can be any animated movie in history, but historically, we can look at a lot of animated movies and see that they don't really have many black characters. So what would you say is the one that would have benefited most from having an all black cast?
Wow, it's a good question. Um, Prince of Egypt.
Yeah.
I mean,
That
it
sticks out.
is set in Africa. I think it could have benefited having an all-black cast, but also black characters on the screen too.
That's
They
a
were a
really
little,
good one.
they were maybe a little, they were tan, they were khaki, but
Khaki.
Yeah, for sure. No, I remember growing up and watching that, and it didn't really strike me until like I got to a certain age. I'm like, oh yeah, we should have like a lot more black characters here. Like you say, they get the tan, the brownish color. So we're
Yeah.
we're leaning to it, but there was room. There was room there for sure. But that's a
Yeah, they like
that's a good
skin.
one. It's a
Mm-hmm.
light skin.
No, they
Um,
definitely like skin.
Des, what would you say, man?
Wow. What would I say?
Yeah.
Man, that's still a hard question. I would go with something ridiculous, man. That's something that's like, what would that look like with black characters? I don't know, like Pixar's A Bug's Life. What it would be like with all black cast, like being in those weird situations with like the grasshopper and stuff. What it would feel like with an all black cast would be crazy.
Yeah, for sure. I'm interested in that because there will probably be some racial implications in that one too. Social
Mhm.
class structures. The one I came up with was it was Cars. I wanted to see like an all black Cars, like focusing on cars like really tied to black culture. Like those are non-human characters, which is already like its own thing. But I wanted to see like a version with like a hoopty or a Cadillac or like a
Mhm.
Toyota Camry or something like that.
You wanted an animated Fast and the Furious.
Pretty much.
There you go. Yeah, yeah. Make it about family, lean into that idea, so that could have been something interesting. But yeah, appreciate you answering that. We just wanted to, kind of start off to get the wheels turning. But yeah, we're gonna dive into, kind of a few things in terms of like what you're doing now and what you've done in the past, outside of that. So Des, you want to, sort of kick it off and then we can just kind of
Yeah.
go from there.
Yeah, as a very, I think, general opening question, as a man who has been in the animation industry for a while at this point, what inspired you to pursue, I guess, your career in animation? I know, you used to draw and things like that, but was there a particular, show or style of animation that, like, I think really ignited your passion for it, or to where you figured out that's something you wanted to do? And what motivated you to be like, yeah, I could do this a lot. I could do this on a grander scale for, multiple years of your life.
I think storytelling in general just really spoke to me, right? Just because even at an early age, not even truly understanding the full power and potential of story, I felt it. It was transformative. You know what I'm saying? Like my first, the I guess the most monumental experience that I could remember would be seeing Star Wars in the movie theater for the first time, right? Giving away my age. But it was so mind blowing, right? Just seeing this world that that George Lucas created from scratch, right? Where like there's spaceships flying everywhere and stuff exploding and stormtroopers and lightsabers and, you know what I mean, X-Wing fighters and type, like this shit was just, it blew my mind, you know, and just the fact that you can imagine a world and actually create it and put it on screen and make people feel what I felt watching it, that inspired me to want to be a storyteller. I didn't know what kind of storyteller, or, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't know, I just knew I wanted to make people feel the same way that I felt watching that, you know? And then on the animation side, I just always been a big cartoon junkie. You know what I'm saying? So like, I grew up, you know, watching a lot of Chuck Jones stuff, you know what I mean? Like watching Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner, a lot of the Warner Brothers stuff. Big Hanna-Barbera fan. So I grew up with the Flintstones and the Jetsons the thing that did kind of strike me as a little strange when I was a kid was watching this Flintstones and watching the Jetsons. It became apparent that they thought that Black people weren't in the future or the past. You know what I'm saying? And I thought that was really kind of, it was one of those things I made a mental note of as a kid. And I think over the years, you know, I did feel like I wasn't seeing myself represented. And as I got older, I then began to think about how I could maybe do this as a career and make a change, you know?
Absolutely. I'm really, you know, interested to know about that sort of evolution to where you are now, because I saw that like with the company with Martian Blueberry that started just a few years ago while the pandemic was happening. How do you get to the place where, you know, you're starting off in the industry, you're working, you know, you're really making a name for yourself, to ultimately say like, I actually want to have my own company and I want to be the force behind this that's really sort of steering the ship? Because I imagine that, you know, you have to have a lot of years of experience and just different exposure to the knowledge of the industry and how things work. So how did you reach that place? Did you always know you wanted to eventually have your own company, or was this something that was kind of birthed as you grew within the industry?
I don't know. I always had an entrepreneurial spirit, I guess. You know what I mean? Because even before I got into the animation industry, you know, I was selling bootleg movies and DVDs and stuff like that. Like I was always, you know, at one point I was selling incense and oils on the street. Like I was going in barbershops, like drawing pictures of people. You know what I mean? I was doing caricatures, and so I always had like an entrepreneurial kind of mindset or hustle. But as far as starting Martian Blueberry, then that came about also because I saw a need, right? Like, what, you know, because I've been in the game for like 18 years, bro. So in the beginning, when we were doing Boondocks, there was always a problem communicating the culture to the artists, right? And that's domestic artists in Korea, Japan, no matter where we go, there was still, you know, because the Boondocks was kind of like a subculture. You know what I'm saying? It was like, there's like Black culture, and then there's like, what we were doing was like a little bit of a deeper dive into a very specific tribe of people that resonated with that kind of thing, right? It's kind of like what Chappelle was doing. It was very culturally specific, right? And there just was never like a shorthand language between us and the artist. So a lot of times what I would have to do is act out entire scripts. Like I would literally, every Thugnificent, you know, Pimp Named Slickback movement and gesture that you saw in the show, that was because I acted it out on camera, and we sent it to the artist, or we passed it to the artist for reference. And so over the years, working with various different studios from all over the place, I realized there's just not a lot of us in these studios. You know what I mean? And especially in Hollywood, because a lot of the artists are coming out of Cal Arts, and they have a small percentage of Black artists that are coming out of Cal Arts that even, you know, afforded the opportunity to go to a Cal Arts. So, you know, so you see this trickle down effect where there's just not a lot of representation. So, so during the pandemic, right, animation, we got really busy doing a lot of animation because all the studio productions were shut down. So you don't think about, you know, on the commercial side of things, you know, how that's affected too. Well, at least I didn't until my phone started ringing, you know, but it's like, you know, there was no one could shoot anything. So we launched it at the beginning of the pandemic, And so we were doing a bunch of commercial work, but at the same time, the George Floyd situation happened, right? And unfortunately, that was a moment where Hollywood was like, oh, these stories do need to be told. And we do want to be inclusive. And it was like this Hollywood reparations that was happening. But we know it was all because they were trying to be on the right side of the fight, right? But that, needless to say, that still opened up a lot of windows of opportunity. You know what I'm saying? So it was actually a good time to launch the company. And I think it's expanded since then because we started out as just like a full service animation studio, but then it's now expanded into a multi-vertical creative agency. So we're not only just providing animation services, we're also creating original IP, and we're exploring many different verticals outside of the Hollywood construct. So we're doing collectible toys, we're doing books, graphic novels, comics, fashion lines, NFTs and Web3, which is a big part of what we're building. And yeah, so
Yeah, no, that I think that all makes a ton of sense. And even I think in that same vein, I do have a question where, you were talking about outside of Hollywood, which is where I think you seem to that seems to be where you want Martian Blueberry, I think, to operate, right? Kind of a little bit outside of that Hollywood feel and gaze in terms of the things that they have to get done. And I think a lot of consumerism today is about the numbers, right? A lot of companies are susceptible to make something driven by the numbers and by the stats versus like just original stories. And I think Martian Blueberry is trying to be more authentic in that way, where you tell Black stories first, and at a high level, and to where it's so good, people got to mess with it, right?
No,
So
I love hearing you say that because
yeah,
you know, man. I honestly, and I've done like even over the past this year, I've done a bunch of interviews, right? And that's always something I try to speak on, but I've never heard anyone that's interviewing me actually bring that up. So I appreciate you even acknowledging that because we are moving into this era where everything is being driven by analytics, numbers, and metrics, right? But you couldn't use those analytics, numbers, and metrics to determine whether or not Star Wars needed to be made, or shit. I mean, E.T., the Boondocks, any of the stuff that like the stuff that actually made a real impact was because the creatives behind it had a real passion for telling those stories and creating those worlds. And they connected with people on an emotional level. And that's not going to always, you're not going to always see that on paper. You're just not. You know what I'm saying? I mean, look, Aqua Teen Hunger Force was a huge show for Adult Swim, right? There's no way in hell you could pitch that show to any other network and they would understand it. Like I can't imagine you going into Fox and saying this is a show about a meat wad and a milkshake and a box of fries that live next door to a dude named Carl. Like, how do you pitch that? So no one, but Adult Swim was one of those places where, Mike Lazo, who was the head of Adult Swim at the time, he's since retired, but he was a real visionary in terms of like seeing how this company could be a creator driven company and actually reach a very specific demographic and not have to compromise the integrity of the artist or go really broad with the content. Because usually people think in terms of like, oh, we got to reach a huge market, so everything has to be not offensive and understood by all, and you got to, so they go really broad with the characters and the stories. And a lot of times, you trying to reach everybody causes you not to reach anybody, And he was one of the very few executives that truly believed in supporting creators, and we were spoiled by that because they gave us so much room to do so much stuff, and that's only because he really was like, fuck the numbers and all of this shit. I believe in this and I believe in you. And they gave us an opportunity to explore,
By that same vein, do you think there are challenges in not going by the numbers, you know what I mean, in that authentic way, in that just telling our story first and then, continuing with the project? Do you think there's challenges in,
of course,
the inverse?
Yeah, there's challenges, but I mean, anything that's worth anything is going to have its challenges. If it's too easy, you should be careful because it's probably not going to have the impact that you're looking for. I mean, think about shows like South Park, right? Like South Park is extremely polarized, right? So there's people that really hate it and there's people that really love it. But that's the only way it would have reached the level of success that it reached, you know? And you know what I mean? So like, I just think we can't be afraid to fuck up. You know what I'm saying? Because that's the only way. We have to experiment in order to find, you know, a new way to do shit. At one time, everybody was shooting basketball like this. You know what I'm saying? Right.
Yeah.
So somebody had to be like, yo, how would it be if we put it up here? You know? And then that became the thing, right? So like at some point we just gotta be brave enough to take risks and experiment and just do some new shit. And it might not work, but at least you tried, you know what I'm saying? And if it didn't, it didn't. So who cares? Like you go back to the drawing board and try something else, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But I think when we start trying to be too cautious about, you know, not, you know, reaching these target demographics and numbers and making sure that you know that you hit all these, because that's the other thing is like a lot of these studios and networks, you know, they all have these numbers that they got to hit. So the best way to minimize their risk is to use numbers from pre-existing projects like it. But then when you do that, you never really can truly create the fertile ground that you need to grow something new. You know what I'm saying? That's why they keep microwaving old shit. That's why you see all of these old TV shows and movies being revamped, because there's less risk and they're spending less money now because that's a whole nother thing. But yeah.
You know, I'm really glad you said that too, because I think at least from a fan's perspective of watching certain franchises, companies, whatever it may be, in addition to always leaning on analytics and numbers, it also feels like some of them are a little too precious and protective of those brands, which kind of prohibits their growth. You talk about Star Wars, and I think Star Wars current day has a fair share of problems, and a lot of it feels like that they're too protective of the identity of it, which prevents it from growing. There have been some exceptions that I like, but I think that that's been a constant problem. So I'm really interested about that relationship that you all had with a network like Adult Swim that allowed you that creative leeway. You mentioned that there was just opportunities to just say, fuck it, we're going to do what we do and ignore the numbers. But how many times and how many situations did it become apparent that you might have been like going too far? Or were you ever cautious of that? Were you ever mindful that like, okay, maybe we might be going a little bit too hard and we might be losing, you know, some of our audience and causing a little bit too much controversy?
That's a good question. I mean, there were times where I don't know that we ever internally thought that we went too far across the line. Like, you know what I mean? But whenever, you know, like if we get an episode pulled or you know, taken off the air, or it doesn't make it to air because, you know, it was like the BET episode didn't even make it to air, and the pause episode we did for Boondocks, you know, that one got pulled right after the first night that it aired. So we don't really know we crossed the line until somebody says, "Hey, you fucked up," or "Hey, the show is not. We're not going to air it." I think, I don't know, man. Like we you know, I feel like because a lot of us were new to the television world, like speaking, you know, mainly in regards to like myself, you know, Aaron Magruder, Yamar Taylor, you know, she had done like a few things before the Boondocks, but nothing really, you know, that big. And even some of the artists that we hired, you know, we just had like a team of people, I think, that was just not knowing what we shouldn't do or couldn't do, opened up doors for us to do things that most people weren't doing. And it just so happened that, you know, I mean, Fox had turned down the show initially, which is, I think, the best thing that could have happened to it, because it just wasn't the right fit, right? But Adult Swim was just happened to be that place where, you know what I mean? Like they let you do what you want to do. Now, they did pull us back. Like when we did the pause episode, because originally the Winston Jerome character was named Tyler Perry, and he looked just like Tyler Perry. And they were like, "No, you can't do that." And it's very rare that they do that, but they were like, "Yo, you can't, right? So then we changed it so he didn't look like him. And then we found out Tyler Perry's real name, and we tried to sneak that in there. And then it got through for like a couple of weeks. And then Adult Swim caught it. And they were like, what are y'all doing, man? Like, let's stop fucking around. Like, for real. Like, don't do anything, don't use his real name. So then we called him Winston Jerome. And then we changed around some things. And we thought we were safe. We thought it was just a little bit more parody. But, because we had got some inside information from Gary Anthony Williams, who played Uncle Ruckus, because he auditioned for a Tyler Perry movie, and he actually made it to the second audition. And he was told that, like, once you make it to that second audition, you pretty much in there. But he wasn't. He got cut from the film. And he thought it was because when he was in that prayer circle, because they had a prayer circle, that he wasn't really involved in the prayer. Like, he was like looking around, checking out who was in there. He's looking at different people. And he got the inclination from someone else that maybe he was filming those prayer circles, right? So that's why we put it in the show like that. And I think maybe it was too close to home. Like, there was certain things in there that he might have thought like he had like a leak or a mole or something. You know what I'm saying? So like that, but that was an example of where, the politics involved with that being Tyler Perry. And by the way, I got love for Tyler Perry just as a businessman and what he's done for the culture. You know what I'm saying? But we was young, you know what I mean? Like, we were going for the joke, you know what I mean? And he, at the time, he had a bunch of shows on TBS, and TBS was the parent company, or Turner was the parent company of Adult Swim. So he had way more pull than we did, you know what I mean? So it's like, they're not going to sacrifice their relationship with Tyler for us. And so we, but that doesn't, it doesn't happen often, man. And like, we try not to think about that, because it's kind of like, in my opinion, it's like creating in a vacuum. Like, you can't really, you know what I'm saying? You can't do something that's going to be subversive, or, you know what I mean? Or anything I think that's good or that I would consider art. You can't do it thinking about filtering it through the lens of everyone else and people who will be offended, and all of that stuff is just going to compromise the art. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you kind of got to go for it. You just got to go for it and see what happens. Random question: do you watch Atlanta?
I do.
Have you seen the Mr. Chocolate episode of Atlanta?
Yeah.
I have to ask now, Dylan, now knowing what Tyler Perry in the episode of the Boondocks, how did you feel about the Mr. Chocolate episode of Atlanta? I have to ask.
Man, first of all, I think the whole series is just genius. Like, Donald Glover is like, he's just brilliant, bro. Like, I mean, it's definitely some shit like we would have did. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes I would see stuff he would do, and I'm like, man, we would have did that on Black Dynamite, and the stuff I see where I'm like, we would have did that on Boondocks. And I don't know, hopefully we inspired some of it, or, you know what I mean? I don't know if we did, but I know one time he tweeted something about Black Dynamite. It was right after one of the episodes aired. He tweeted about it, which that was like the highlight. That was a highlight of one of the highlights of my career, because I look up to him, and I respect what he does, or, on a high level. But yeah, man, that shit was amazing. That's just amazing. Like, and and that's the thing, man. If you do it the right way, because if it's smart enough, right? Like, if you and he had like a really smart angle. I think, like, if you do it the right way, and also his show is really artsy. You know what I'm saying? It's like, especially the second and third season, that's when they really started breaking rules and doing stuff that's a little bit more avant-garde, and like you didn't really know what to expect. It was a lot of surrealism and shit. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and you see more of that now, like with like Swarm, and what's the movie, the series with the kid that's like really big and shit.
Oh,
like,
I'm a Virgo.
Yeah, like you see that kind of stuff now. Even Sorry to Bother You, that was another film that kind of might have went off the rails a little bit, but the fact that, like, you can do that kind of shit now with Black TV and film like that, that's always really inspiring to me.
Yeah, it was such a pleasure like watching Atlanta when it was airing, like especially those most recent seasons, like literally not knowing what to expect on a week to week basis. I think after the second or third episode, I'm like, oh, this isn't like what we just saw, a few years ago. Like they came back with a completely different energy. So I definitely agree. And to sort of add on to what's being said about the influence of the Boondocks, I mean, one of the big conversations, I know you're privy to it, is just like the predictive nature of the show, like how many subjects you all tackled have come to pass. And I know you see a lot of that stuff on social media. But what I think is interesting is that it extends past the Boondocks, at least from my opinion. I even think about what you did with Sugar and Toys. I watched an episode recently where you had the Appropriation Annie segment, which is very much
Oh,
leaning into the
wow.
Barbie stuff. And now with like Barbie being at the top of like pop culture conversations right now. And that movie's, I think a part of that movie, the reason it's so successful is because it is being a little bit more sophisticated about Barbie's place in society and just some of the problematic stuff behind it. But you were doing that years ago and you were much more, I think, abrasive and biting with the commentary, but it's like it's already there. You're talking about all the stuff, the Indian Barbie, the Native American stuff, and it's hilarious, but it's done so in a really smart
Yo,
way.
I
So
did. I forgot all about that. It's crazy. You're right. I didn't even think about that.
yeah, I'm just curious, like, has this always been, I don't know, how do you arrive to that? Just like there have been so many instances where you are ahead of the curve and these things really do come back 5, 10 years later, whether it's with the Boondocks or you see it in other influences on Atlanta with different creators like Donald Glover, or even just like recently Drake, that stuff with the Thugnificent. I mean, like, how does that make you feel, just like in hindsight with the work that you all did? But as you're like creating, all of these different stories and these different characters, I mean, do you ever imagine that it'll go as far as it's proven, over the past few years?
Nah, I mean, well, for one, it's really I mean, it's amazing to see that like we're still relevant. You know what I'm saying? Like that the stuff still plays today, and that people are still, like I'll be on TikTok and I'll just like hear my voice coming out of the, you know what I'm saying? And it's like it's crazy to me, just to think that we had that kind of impact, because it's not like it was planned. You know what I mean? And I feel like a lot of it is kind of serendipitous, I guess, if you want to call it. Like, I don't know, man. I feel like it's it just I just think when you do stuff, maybe I don't know, maybe creative people are somewhat, or writers are somewhat tapped into some kind of, you know, zeitgeist, and you know what I mean, that where you kind of be able, where you can see things before they have. I don't know, but I just think a lot of times we just try to tell stories that come from like a real honest place, or the truthful place. And I think because it's coming from a very, very truthful place, it probably, if it doesn't exist, it will soon.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like
Mhm.
because it's so close to what either should be reality or is actually happening. And sometimes it's kind of scary, man. Like we did a episode of Legends of Chamberlain Heights for Comedy Central, and I remember we had this. So the episode was basically about the internet broke, and basically the whole world went to hell, right? So it was like it was apocalypse just because the internet was down for like 10 minutes or some shit like that. But it was like chaotic. It was right. And there was a scene that we wrote where Kobe Bryant he was in his helicopter and it crashed, right? And so he was like crawling out the helicopter with two trophies in his arm, and somebody was like, they were going to help him. They were like, Kobe, pass the trophies, and he was like, pass, like what is that, And then and then the helicopter blew up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And didn't think nothing of it, but of course, like when the incident happened, it was like all over the media and stuff, and that felt weird. You know what I'm saying? Because you definitely would hate to think that in any way you contributed to something like that, because that's definitely, you know what I'm saying? But I do feel like that in a strange way, sometimes those things end up just lining up and being similar. I don't know, but I'm baffled too. Like sometimes I see this shit, like the Popeye shit, like I was like, wow. Like, yo, we did that.
No, yeah, that's real. Especially I was just thinking about the Popeyes one when Jordan asked the question. I was like, that Popeyes, it got
Yeah.
our people, man. It got our people. Man, now I'm just now thinking about it, but thinking about the Popeyes episode, I'm gonna ask you if you've seen something else. Have you seen They Clone Tyrone?
Yes.
What
Yes.
did you feel about that project as well?
Man, well, first of all, Stephen Love, who produced They Clone Tyrone, he's a part of Martian Blueberry. You know what I'm saying? And we're friends, and we got other stuff that we're developing together. But like that shit was amazing, bro. Like I went to see the premiere, and it's I'm just telling you, man. Like it's like I love that we're just in this era of time where we can tell these kind of stories without without people front and center. Like we can take things into a more surreal place, a magical place, parallel world kind of place. Because like even where that film was set was a little unclear, right? It was like, is it in the past? Is it, you know what I'm saying? It was just kind of like an alternate reality. And you typically don't see that with our story. So like that was really inspiring. It felt like something we would have did with Black Dynamite for sure. You know what I'm saying? And I saw some of there was some negative feedback about like, the commentary, maybe, someone feeling like the commentary was, it might have been old or stuff that we've already known. But I'm like, but y'all niggas still eat there. So, hey, you know what I'm saying? So maybe we need to keep driving this point home,
Yeah.
But I thought it was really smart, man. Jamie was fucking hilarious. Like,
incredible.
Oh my God, he killed that character, yo. I mean, and it was just dope, man. My man, John Boyega, dude. I mean, yeah, like he's a GOAT. I mean, I'm a big fan of his from way back when he did Attack the Block.
Attack the Block, yes, sir.
Bro, the Attack the Block was my shit.
Still
I
underrated.
actually want to do something animated with that.
That would be fire. We need to see that. We need to definitely see that. That would be really, really incredible. I'm curious too, like with thinking about that, like just the nature of like these stories that we are seeing, the fact that I totally agree. We've never necessarily been allowed to be sort of like fantastical, like as Black characters and exist in these different worlds and universes and like really just extend beyond the things that personally affect us or have personally affect us. Now we are leaning more into, I think, just the imagination, that we have that we can craft and telling these stories. Like, have you seen other things? Because I think at the time you were entering the industry, there was no voice really for Black animation and what that looks like. But now we do see some of the shifts starting to turn in favor of Black animation. The Spider-Verse movies have been really big. The intergalactic movie from Kid Cudi. I know you work with him on the upcoming Young Love series. I mean, what are your thoughts just about like the expanding palette? Because it's also like a diverse range of stories. It's not just like, oh, these regular characters live in their everyday life. Some of them are taking like these really big creative swings, creating new worlds, creating mythology even, and just, really trying to extend beyond the normal palette that we're used to.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's dope. Spider-Verse, first of all, oh my God, like that. I left that movie theater thinking to myself, I gotta step my game up. Like that shit was crazy. Yo, that scene, the chase scene with all the different Spider-Man, like, I mean, I can't like. That shit was so I mean, bro, especially, for someone like on the production side of it, right? Like understanding it from a creative and production side, like they put off I ain't never seen nothing like that in my life, And that's what I call pushing the boundaries, because even the medium that they're using is so weird and different, and like like the textures are changing, and the colors in the scene are changing based off of the character's mood and the emotion of the scene, and then they're using like like these like sharp like shapes sometimes in the background just to indicate that the character's angry or upset, like all of that kind of like abstract storytelling that's happening on a visual level, like that is just game changing. Like I haven't seen it executed at that level, before, you know. And then with us, you know what I mean? Like that's, you know, what majority, you know, I mean, we're at the center of the story at least.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think, you know, in that same, I mean, Miles Morales being a black character is great, especially having a movie like that is crazy. But as somebody who works, you know, with a lot of black characters, of course, growing up black, we didn't have a lot of animated characters to identify with at all. And if we did, the token black kid was, they always looked the same, like Vince from Recess, Gerald from Hey Arnold. They all were like sports stuff with the same curly mini fro kind of type thing, you know what I'm saying? And now the power of creation is kind of in your hands, right? With Martian Blueberry. It has been for a while too, even before then, right? Too, with the Boondocks. Even I remember first I seen Huey, I was like, okay, Aaron Magruder. Okay, Carl Jones. Let's see what we're doing here. I haven't seen the Huey before. He's actually my profile character on Max right now, which is funny. Oh, nice. But like, how do you approach, I think, the representation of black characters that we have yet to see? You know, because we are real time as black people are still trying to tell our stories. You know what I mean? The normal everyday story on one hand, and on the other hand, we still haven't got to tell our fantastical stuff, you know, that Jordan was just asking you about. So like, how, I think, in your mind do you say, okay, let's talk about this kid? Because in my mind, with every new project, it's like, okay, now who can we represent? Now who's the next character that we can tell this story that hasn't been told before? How do you approach that?
Well, I always start with something I want to say, you know, like either something I want to say or a story that I want to tell. But sometimes that is driven just, well, not sometimes, it's going to come from a place of like passion more so than it is the actual need for it, right? Now to satisfy both is great. You know what I'm saying? You know, if you can fill a void and also be passionate about the story you're telling, but front and center, it's got to be like something I'm passionate about, right? With that being said, the real challenge, or at least what I like to try to inspire us or encourage us as storytellers to do, is to go outside of, to venture into some other cultures that exist within our spectrum, right? Because like, bro, in Ghana, they have a folklore board in Ghana. It's an actual committee that is there just to preserve their folklore. And they have hundreds and hundreds of stories that have never been seen before, right? And to be honest, like Spider-Man is a little derivative, is kind of derivative from Anansi the Spider Guy, which is an old Ghanaian story, you know. And there's some, you know, even with Black Panther, there's a lot of stuff that crept into some old stories in Kenya. You know what I'm saying? So I think what I would love to see, and how I'm trying to think now, is we have such rich culture. We have and you know, I'm talking about, like, if you look at like Black culture across the diaspora, like there's just too much to pull from, right? To tell the same stories over and over again, especially because a lot of times Hollywood is quick to greenlight Black trauma, you know, versus like, you know, some of the more fantastical stuff, you know, those are a little bit harder to sell. And sometimes you have to even raise money independently to produce those projects because it's you know what I mean? Like, but with that being said, I just think what we're trying to build with Martian Blueberry is, you know, we want to partner with like-minded people, even if they don't necessarily have the experience. That's a big part of what we're doing, because because honestly, when, like we were talking about the George Floyd situation, when that happened in Hollywood, was all of a sudden like, we need Black stories, we need diversity and all this stuff, right? There was no showrunners, right? So my phone was ringing, my agent was calling me, he's like, they need a showrunner for this, they need a showrunner for that, they want to do this. But I'm like, you guys, the door was kept closed for so long, you never got a chance to really nurture these writers and grow them into showrunners and executive producers. So now you got a shortage of people that can actually run or be at the helm of a Black TV show. You know what I'm saying? And that's a tragedy, bro. Like, and that's why, like, sometimes I'll be getting jobs by default because there ain't a lot of niggas doing what I'm doing. So what we want to do is we want to change that. We want to start like, you know, cultivating some new up and coming writers and just giving them the tools that they need. Because at the end of the day, and bro, I write, but I consider myself as a storyteller more so than a writer. Like a writer, that's the actual function or the thing that's happening. You're writing, but being a storyteller doesn't require you to necessarily go to school and have years of experience. You know, what I mean? If anything, I look for people that have just a unique point of view and experiences. You know what I'm saying? Because each and every one of us has a unique experience that nobody else has. It's like a fingerprint, right? Like the people that were in your life, the things that you've been through is very unique. So I think like teaching people how to pull from those personal stories and people in their lives, and then crafting a world around that, right? Or building a world around that services your voice and your point of view. Like that's the thing that gets me excited, because I think there's just a lot of brilliant minds that just don't have the opportunity to get in the industry because they don't know where to start. And it's not like there ain't a lot of us is looking back trying to find ways to help us get our foot in the door. You know what I'm saying? So that's what we're trying to do.
I definitely want to come back to the opportunities. I'm curious, like from a process like standpoint, you talk about creating the worlds and bringing your experience and just crafting, you know, those emotional stories that feel honest and true. How do you make something funny? Like, how do you get comedy into animation? Because I think comedy is like such an important like component to a lot of the work that you've previously done. But how do you get there in animation? Because I know it has to be totally different than what's achieved in live action. And we talk about things that like sell. I think historically comedy does sell, you know, if you can make people feel good and laugh, even though you might be also presenting them with a message. But like, what are those nuances that people might not even know about when you're actually trying to like get a comedic message across in an animated style, and you have to account for voice actors and the way that it's drawn and the way that you bring it to life and so on and so forth?
Well, interesting enough, comedy is very similar. Writing comedy is not very different from writing drama. You know, and most people don't see, because the thing about it is like, so drama, when you're writing drama, it comes from a place of conflict, right? Which is also the source of the best comedy. It has to comes from a place of conflict. So sometimes, like if you juxtapose two ideas and you put them together, a lot of times you can find a comedy there. You know what I mean? I guess kind of an example, I don't know if it quite fits this exactly, but like an example would be, so you take a character like Huey, right? So in the beginning, we had trouble making Huey funny because he was kind of an asshole. You know what I'm saying? Like you know what I mean? Like he knows every fucking thing, and he's always checking people and putting Riley in check. And so the way to find the comedy with Huey would be like, okay, you figure out what he wants, right? So he wants to start a revolution. He wants to take down BET. It's a very serious thing. But then the conflict comes in and the comedy comes in with the obstacle. He can't start the revolution because he can't get a ride. It's like, you know what I mean? So it's like reminding people, because so that in that case, the conflict comes in from a flaw. Like the flaw in his character is that he wants to overcome the world, but he's a child, right? So what I usually try to do is when you're thinking about characters, the comedy, I'd rather do comedy. I mean, character-driven comedy, right? So if you create a character and then you figure out where the character's flaws are, right? And the character's flaws are what's working against his goals. So usually what I would do is like, you know, when you start fleshing out your characters, you would write like what your character wants versus what your character needs, right? So what your character wants could be to be loved by millions. What he needs is to learn humility, right? Now, the comedy would come in when you find a way to put that character farther away from their goal and maybe embarrass him because of what he wants. You know what I'm saying? So it's like those are some of the like I guess the tricks of the trade or the tools that you begin to sharpen, and then eventually you can start to filter everything that you create through those things. But I did want to mention one of the things that we also doing with Martian Blueberry. Well, right now we're doing a program with with HBCU where we have like I think we have 12 students that are part of a workshop class about writing and storytelling that we're doing right now. Today was actually the first day. But we're expanding outside of that, and we're actually going to do a Martian Blueberry Academy where we're teaching storytelling, we're teaching storyboarding, character design, NFTs, Web3, and also the business side. So we're teaching. When I say business side, I mean creating a show or a film, the tools that you need to pitch it, how to create a successful pitch so that you have. You know what I'm saying? So you can get traction when you go to Hollywood, or if you decide to go the independent route, like teaching you how to, build community, creating an IP and putting out a book first, so you own the publishing rights, so that you can have creative control when you do go to market or take it to TV or film, like things like that none of us. I didn't know when I first got into business. There was nobody there to teach me. We want to create that. We want to create that education for our, for people that want to, that are aspiring to get into the business.
Yeah, I love that y'all paying that forward, because I know for sure that I know a lot of people who are trying to get into the business who have no idea, I think, which avenues, to go down or how to operate it or what that playbook, I think, looks like in order to get it. So I love that a lot. It's also funny you mentioned as soon as you started talking about there's a conflict, I instantly thought about episode 1 where Huey is like, Jesus is black, Ronald Reagan is the devil, and the government is lying about 9/11. But what's funny is because the conflict is just white people don't believe him, or like white people don't care about what he has to say. You know what I mean? So I think that's funny. Mm-hmm.
Exactly, because so if he would have said that at a Black Panther rally, it was no comedy there. He had to say it at a garden party full of white people. So that's where you take, like, okay, you got this idea of Huey wanting to get these things off his chest, right? Now, what's the worst place that he could do that, right? Because if you found the worst place that he could do that, you could take it down a dramatic road too, because it could end really horribly if it was a drama, right? Mm-hmm. If he said it at a Klan rally. But if you took but that same drama or tension that's created because of these two things that shouldn't be together can also give you comedy. It's almost like, I don't know, like back in the day they used to call, when I grew up we called it cracking, some people call it snapping or whatever. But the dozens, the idea of the dozens came out of slavery. Because the slaves that had defects were being sold by the dozen, right? So when somebody said your mama had a wooden leg with a kickstand, it was probably true. Right. But they were saying it, but this is the thing. But that's why, but comedy has always been, it's been like a source of healing for us, right? It's like, it's the way that it's a coping mechanism. It's how we get through some harsh realities. And so that's why at the root of it, there'll be some drama. There's always the best comedy. Even like, you look at some of the best comedians are some real dark, tragic people. You know what I mean? Like, they have like some real dark shit going on, but the comedy is therapeutic for them, and that's why I think they're able to actually, tell really strong jokes, because they're already understanding that the pain involved, you know what I'm saying, and how to juxtapose that,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, going off that same idea, that I think because you have so many front facing, Black shows, to where I think Black people have to be perceived in a specific way. Have you ever been afraid of how Black person or Black people might be perceived, given a joke that you wanted to tell? Like, of course, usually I think everything you've made has been for us, by us, right? Like, it's like, oh, this isn't for, white people. This has mainly been for Black people. But has there ever been a moment like, damn, white people might look at this kind of crazy? Like, have you ever came to like any of those moments?
Yeah. I've had those. I've had a couple moments like that. It's tough, man. Because there's a lot of responsibility, I think, that falls on our shoulders, because we gotta, because we're dealing with years of not seeing ourselves represented in a positive light, right? So then when there is an opportunity to see us, you know, not I'm usually more concerned with how our people will perceive it, especially today, because there's a heightened sensitivity to how we're portrayed, and also I think an overcorrecting that's happening. You know what I'm saying? And when I say overcorrecting, meaning now it's hard to have Black characters with flaws, you know, and I went through this on a show recently, you know, where we wanted to do certain things with a character, and the notes or the feedback that we got was that it was a little cringy and stuff like that, right? But from my perspective, especially when you're writing comedy, like you need character flaws to create comedy. But not only that, but you got to give characters room to grow, right? So even if a character starts out in a place where they're a little fucked up in how they see the world, right? It's okay to show that, you know, because the reality is we all got things that are flawed about us. We don't, you know, it's like how everyone's like really hard on any like people's old tweets and shit, right? Like when you're gonna go dig up your old stuff and like you said this in, you know, in 2005, right? But it's like, are we not allowed to make any mistakes at all? Because if we're approaching the culture in such a way that now we're no longer able to make wrong decisions, right? There's really no room for real growth, you know, and everyone is now painting a picture that's not real. It's not what you really think and what you really feel. It's just what is going to make this. It's a survival mechanism. It's now you're doing this so that you can survive and you're not canceled or people aren't, you know, and that's unfortunate because I think it interferes with our ability to actually have real conversations that could lead to some real growth and evolution. You know, because if we don't talk about the shit, you know what I'm saying, and just sweep it under the rug and not address some of these issues that we have, it's like giving a person with cancer Tylenol. You know, it's like it's not, you know, eventually it's still going to eat away at the, you know, and so but it is something. It's challenging, bro, because there is a line that you got to walk. Because I also feel I'm invested in portraying us in a certain way too. You know what I'm saying? Like I feel I'm sensitive to it too. But I'm also a storyteller and an artist, so I want to do it in a way that it still rings true, right? But it's like when you, I guess Boondocks is probably the best example, I think, where we might have done it the best, because I think some of the other stuff I did was probably a little more socially irresponsible. But like Boondocks had such a balance of perspectives, right? So there was many entry points into this world, right? So yeah, you can have an Uncle Ruckus exist in a Thugnificent because we didn't portray Black people in a monolithic way. We showed all these different, you know what I'm saying? But not only that, not only just like the Rileys and the Thugnificents and the Uncle Ruckus, but we showed different kinds of white people too. You know what I'm saying? Like you got Ed and Rummy and, you know what I'm saying, Onceler and, you know, but that was like a very well balanced, like honest portrayal of the society that we really lived in, you know. So no one could really, like, they might get mad at Uncle Ruckus or be offended, but you got Huey on some really smart shit on the other side of that spectrum, right? So like you really can't hold, you know what I mean? Like you would, we never had a situation where somebody was like, the personal views and opinions of the people behind the Boondocks is Uncle Ruckus, because there was too many other things that we did that was smart on the show that I think didn't make people feel like that, you know?
Want to sort of shift gears back to what you were mentioning earlier with your company and some of the opportunities. So we're in the midst of the writer strike and the actor strike in Hollywood. And I know, you know, sort of animation and the guilds within animation work differently and sort of operate differently, but are you all also having those conversations about working conditions? Because I think the inverse of like the success of a movie like Spider-Verse that we've seen, one of the things that we talked about a few weeks ago on our show is, you know, some of the animators coming out from behind the scenes saying that they had a really difficult experience managing the workload, and some of the organizational process was just it was not ideal, and it led to a lot of animators quitting the project. So Are you also, sort of injecting any of your own personal experience to educate, these future animators and these future creators about what that might look like? And, how do you feel about just, preparing people for that conversation on pursuing their dream and their passion, of course, but knowing that there's probably going to be some challenges ahead just because of the nature of the business and how things work?
That's a great question. Yeah, the working conditions. So particularly animation I'm speaking to, right? It's the schedules are really insane. Like the schedules and the budgets don't really make sense typically. Like there's exceptions to the rule, depending on how big and successful your show is. I'm sure if you're Family Guy, you got to in the same budget, and the staff is enough of a staff to, what I'm saying, to handle the short time frame that you have to make this stuff. And most people don't even consider this as a short time frame because it takes like a year and a half to 2 years to produce a series. And so, I understand like how people might look at that and go, that's a long time. But when you look at the actual production and what's happening, because it's a very compartmentalized process, but everything is overlapping and happening at the same time. So we have what we call like a waterfall schedule, right? Where you basically, where there's not like, you finish one part of the production, then you move on to the next. There's like 6 or 7 different stages of production happening simultaneously, right? And a lot of times the artists are given very little time to do, especially if it's an anime style show, because that's a more realistic show with like real painted backgrounds and you know what I mean. So it's a lot, and I can't front, like I would push a lot of my, why would I say push a lot of my artists? I think most of the people that like work under me or with me, was also wanting the end product to be good, so they were dedicated and willing to put in the extra time and stay overnight and do all of this kind of stuff, right? But that's only because the schedule was just ridiculous. The schedule is just ridiculous, and I've been saying this forever, but it just falls on deaf ears because at the end of the day, that bottom line is louder than anything that you can say. So you never really see it doesn't change much. But what I will say about the strike, and the thing that I'm talking about a lot lately, is ownership, right? And not only ownership, but so if we're at this fork in the road, right, where creatives feel like they've been exploited, they feel like they're not respected, they're not valued, and they're not being paid their worth, right? But because there's no other options, there's no real incentive for Hollywood to necessarily bend to your needs and your wants. As a matter of fact, there was a studio executive that said in the trades that they were going to push this strike so far that people would lose their homes and not be able to pay their mortgages. I don't know if you saw that, right?
Yeah.
So like the audacity of someone to even say that, right, is insane. And I kind of view this as like you're in a bad relationship, right? And you're begging your partner to see your worth, and you shouldn't have to do that. But the moment that they know that there's someone else in the picture, or there's a possible another option, you know what I mean, then the person starts to act right. And I think that's what we're about to see. And that's only, and I feel like when we get pushed in the corner, I think human beings just by nature are really resilient. And when we get backed into a corner or we get pushed to a wall, that's where we get really creative and innovative, and we find another way. So there's only so long you could take advantage of people before they find another way to do shit. And there is another way. And this is why I've been pushing really hard for people to understand Web3 and NFTs. And I know it's got a negative connotation, and people got a knee-jerk reaction to NFTs because a lot of the bad actors in the space and people have, it's like any new market or the stock market. Like you got bad people that play the stock market, but there's also a lot of good shit that happens. So I push it really hard because Web3, just explain it in a nutshell, because that's the biggest problem, is most people don't truly understand it. But Web 1 was, in a nutshell, was reading the internet. Web 2 was being able to write and engage in the internet. Web 3 is actually being able to have stake and ownership in the internet. And what that means is right now, our data is the number one commodity in the world, right? Which is basically our attention. Where we focus our attention is where all the money is being made. So every bit of data that we're presenting online, right? Whether it's comments or where our eyes are or content we're putting out that's drawing people's eyes to it, all of that data, right? We are not monetizing at all. And we have no stake in the platform, and we have no say if they don't want us on the platform anymore, right? So it's digital colonialism. So we're literally providing all of this culture and content and information that's being monetized, refined, and sold back to us, right? So what Web3 offers is the ability to have digital ownership over your data and your identity, right? So it's literally, that's all it is. All the NFT is a token that represents your stake in a particular asset, right? A digital asset. That's all it is. So I'm just saying that, so the basic premise of that is game changing, because the issue that we're having with streamers, right? If they integrated blockchain technology and Web3 technology into the framework of Hollywood, each and every time there's something is, so when you create a TV show, right? You have a digital, you have a token that represents your stake in that particular TV show or film, right? There's a smart contract in place that happens through AI, that each and every time that someone watches that movie, there's a check that gets cut. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That goes directly to each and every person's wallet that was involved in the making of that film. So this is why I've been pushing. I've even talked to the WGA about it, because I'm telling you, like, this is revolutionary and game changing, because I'm talking about if you truly approach it from a decentralized perspective, right? And so what it also allows people to do is fans of the content are also stakeholders. So when I think about the success of the Boondocks, that happened because of the people that loved it so much and broadcasted it to the world and helped to market and promote it, because you know what I'm saying? Like, it wouldn't be as big as it was if it wasn't for the people. So how come the people that contributed to the success of it aren't benefiting from it? Like, you should have a stake in that. You know what I'm saying? So instead of a shareholding community, it's a stakeholding community. So now when you and this is what we're actually working on, a platform, on a media platform like a Netflix, right? That has a social media component to it, that when you subscribe to the channel, or to the platform, you are immediately a stakeholder in it. So as it grows in success and becomes more valuable, so does the asset that you hold. You know what I'm saying? And that's the way it should be done. That way it's even playing. That way you don't just have the big guy making multi-billions of dollars, and then bro. I did a Vlad interview with Vlad yesterday, right? And he, because we had him on the Boondocks, right? Like back, like he was, he played himself. Yeah. So he said, so bro, he said, I'm so thankful that you let me be on the show. He said, I'm going to give you my residual, my residual check that I just got last month for the show, and it was $4.05.
Wow.
Yep.
$4.05.
Like, this shit has to change, man.
Yeah.
The last thing I'll say on this topic, even with this podcast, right? Here's the beautiful thing about like even the show you have. Like, bro, this content is so valuable. If the dopest thing about Web3 is you don't have to reach 10 million people, right? In order for you to make money and accrue value. You can have 1,000 people, but if each one of those 1,000 people, are stakeholders, right? And you lay out a strategy, a business strategy for your show, right? Where you're building value in it, and they're incentivized to help you build value in it because they have stake in it, and it doesn't take money out your pocket because because they have a digital token that represents their asset, or you know what I mean? And so as your company becomes more valuable and the show becomes more popular, they also benefit, which makes them even bigger evangelists for it. You know what I'm saying? I'm telling you, this shit is the wave of the future. When we dropped an NFT project called Bubble Goose Ballers last year during the bear market, and we sold out 10,000 NFTs in less than an hour. And we built a really strong community around this project. And now on the back of Bubble Goose Ballers, we're building this multimedia. I mean, we're building Martian Blueberry. And now that we have a new pathway to seed IP and to grow it and build communities around it and explore different verticals, I'm telling you, bro, like that's and retain your ownership, and then go to Hollywood later, you know, and do a TV show or movie. Yeah. I'm sorry, I could go on for because I'm just really passionate about it.
You just dropped all the gems in the world right there. That is like really, no, as you said, that's game changing stuff. And I think that is definitely feeling like the next wave. So I'm glad you illustrated it in that way, because I think that idea of like audience members, fans, you know, growing those communities, but also having that stakeholder, you know, sort of ownership in these properties is crucial because of just the success and the value that we do provide to those things. So yeah, I think you educated a lot right there.
Yeah, for sure. Also, shout out to Bubble Goose Ballers, man. All those NFTs are really dope, by the way. I've seen them. Yeah, I've been seeing them for a while. I was like, oh shoot, these look really dope. I also love the story behind Bubble Goose Ballers and stuff too. I think I know a little bit about some Bubble Goose Ballers.
I see, you know, that's what's up.
In kind of in that same vein, Bubble Goose Ballers, of course. I know you talked about how you used to, I mean, the way you used to draw, you know, the characters and stuff, and how it's like, of course, the specific jackets and coats they got on. Kind of in that same vein, there is, your career always feels like there's also like this secret. I don't even know if it's a secret, but a love for hip hop, right? And so shout out to you for first of all voicing Thugnificent. It's like one of my favorite characters for sure. But also, I know before that was supposed to be Ludacris. You talked about that at one point in time too. That was supposed to be. But not only that, but you've worked with numerous rappers. We know you got Megan Thee Stallion project. We know you got, what is it, Karaku with Super Duper Kyle. I'm just curious, what is your relationship to hip hop and how that strives to animation, as well as some of the future projects you have with other, you know, music stars, rappers, R&B singers coming out. What is kind of like your relationship to all of that?
I mean, it's kind of like the fabric of every bit of art that we create now, to me, because like, I mean, you know, at one point it was the soundtrack. Not only just the soundtrack to our life, I think it was also like hip hop contextualized what was happening in our communities. You know, when I'm talking about in its inception, like it was a way for us. It was the voice of our people, and it was loud, and it was disruptive, and it didn't give a fuck. You know what I'm saying? Like it didn't care who didn't understand it. Hip hop it wasn't apologetic. It was what it was. You know, it wasn't trying to reach everybody. That's the other thing, right? Like talking about going broad. Like, I mean, Wu-Tang was damn near rapping in hieroglyphics. Like half of us didn't even know what they were talking about, right? But like, you know what I'm saying? So that is, because that was like, to me, like the foundation for all of the art that all of the art that we made. You know, it only felt right that we would work with artists and make the music a big part of the storytelling too. You know what I'm saying? Because I think it's the culture, right? So it inspired our attitude and our fashion, and it inspired, you know what I'm saying, the way we talk, our slang, our swag. Like hip hop is everything, you know. So I feel like now I'm in a place where I can actually work with some of these artists that I look up to and am inspired by. And actually it's interesting because, like, you know, because I'm doing some stuff with Trippie Redd too, and Chief Keef as well. And like these guys, like, you know, they grew up, like they were kids, like watching the stuff that I was making, right? And so there's this like mutual respect. Like I got love and respect for what they do on the music side. They got love and respect what I do on the animation side. So it's like that's why I think a lot of what we're doing with Martian Blueberry, there is this fusion of music, you know, hip hop and animation that just happened organically, and we've embraced it to the point where we actually are launching a music division of Martian Blueberry. So we have I can't talk too much about the projects that we're working on, but we've been talking to different record labels and partnering with them for specific projects. So like there's a project that we're doing with Republic Records that I can't talk too much about, but I'll just say Wheezy, and that's it. But we got but it was just but it really was just like this organic thing that just made sense. It wasn't like because even with Boondocks, I mean, like we hired like Knife Wonder did some of the music. Big Tank, who's also credited producer. Another producer named For 10 is really dope, and even a Metaphor the Great, Double J the Genius, who did a lot of production, and I mean these are like real hip hop heads, real hip hop artists doing real music. You know what I'm saying? That was really important that we had the kind of music that felt like the show. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. You've been super generous with your time today. I just want to, sort of start to wrap up with a couple last questions. Outside of your own work, and we've already kind of talked about some of the other things you've been sort of tapped into, from Atlanta to the Spider-Verse movies, but have you seen anything else lately that's really inspired you that you would recommend that people watch outside of your own work that you've been working on?
What have I watched lately? I know there's something. I'm trying to think. It's not animated though, but I just watched Painkillers, which was really crazy. There's a series called Painkillers. It's
I
pretty
think I've
wild.
heard about that one. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's about the OxyContin epidemic. You know what I'm saying? But it's but because I watch a bunch of shit. The thing that I tell you, one thing that I watch religiously over and over and over again, and I've been watching it for years, and it's just I'm addicted, and I've seen each and every episode maybe about 100 times. Is The Office.
I just rewatched that entire series like a couple months ago.
Well, so Peacock, they got a lot of those episodes, like the what do you call it, the like the cutting room, the stuff that got cut from the episode. So they got the longer extended versions with the stuff that didn't get cut. Man, it's like it's you gotta watch it. It's amazing. But yeah, let me see, anime. On the animation side, Cyberpunk.
Yes.
Crazy.
Yes.
Crazy.
Crazy.
Man, like
nuts.
Bro. Yeah, I love that shit so much. And I saw Turtles at the theater. Turtle, the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, we just reviewed that one. Yeah, it was really good.
I could not believe they had an iced tea line 6 a.m. police out my door.
Yeah,
Ninja Turtles.
It was crazy.
Yeah, I love
that movie. Black as hell.
Yeah. It's funny. I had pitched an idea because I met with Nickelodeon because they were looking for some new ideas for Turtles. And this was years ago, but I pitched to them this idea that because they never really got a chance to be teenagers, like actual teenagers. So I pitched this idea. I was like, what if like Odd Future was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, right?
Wow.
And they actually took like one of the I forgot the name of the technology that they got from like Shredder or whatever, and where basically it could basically create like a human skin, or at least the projection of like a human body. So they ended up actually like going to high school and like what I'm saying, living out like being like a regular high school kid or whatever. But they did so. But it's funny. So they said they couldn't do it. They said they loved this idea. Out of all the ones that they heard, they were like, we really like this. And but they were like, it's too close to the actual creator of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, who an idea that he had, but I didn't know anything about the movie at the time.
Yeah, that's funny how that was happening like around the same time. Yeah. I'm grateful that we got it now, as you said. Like we didn't really get a chance to experience their teenage years and that side of them. So it definitely turned out well. But I think I speak on behalf of both of us, man. We really appreciate you and your time today. You've inspired not only us, but just so many people all over the years. I remember always just seeing your name and Aaron Magruder's name at the end of those episodes, thinking like, yeah, those are black men behind that. That's just like an incredibly
Oh
great
man.
moment to know that existed, you know, and there wasn't many opportunities or spaces for that. And so to even see where you are now with Martian Blueberry, it's really an inspiration for everything that you all are doing, and just all the avenues and pathways and pipeline that you're really creating for future artists. Before we wrap up, is there anything else you want to mention about the company, the future, and just like the overall outlook of what you have in store for Martian Blueberry?
No, just follow us, follow us on Instagram at We Are Martian B. And check out Bubble Goose Ballers on Twitter. We got a really we put out a lot of fun stuff. We're doing a lot of cool things. So on Twitter we're at Bubble Goose XYZ, at Bubble Goose XYZ. And you can go to our website too. It's bubblegoose.xyz.
Amazing. Well, again, Carl, thank you again for the time today. Can't wait to see everything y'all have in store with Martian B and Bubble Goose and everything that you'll be working on in the future. Again, you're a true inspiration, I think, to a lot of people. So appreciate the time today, and hopefully we'll do this again soon sometime.
Awesome, man. Thank you. I appreciate y'all.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Take it easy.
All right. Peace.